I see it in the comments on every single video. All the reasons why a game doesn't work, shouldn't work, cannot possibly work, all the things that are wrong with game, and I even see some reasonable arguments. Now, if you think that I'm gonna tell you that game doesn't work, you are absolutely f***ing crazy. I'm not gonna tell you that. However, there are a lot of valid arguments here, and I wanna break them down for you because there is some good logic in them and there's a lot to be learned from them. So I'm gonna talk to you about all these different reasons why game can't work and why they're actually sort of valid arguments to a point, and then I'm gonna tell you why exactly it is that game does work. Even though it seems illogical, even though it seems unreasonable, there are some fundamental key principles that make game work. So I'm gonna share that with you right now. There is a lot to get into in this video, so I'm not gonna beat around the bush, I'm just gonna get right into it. Here are the biggest objections, the biggest reasons I see why people think game doesn't work. One of the most common objections I hear regarding game is the idea that it doesn't work unless you are tall, good looking, wealthy, have your life together, own a yacht, whatever. It doesn't work unless you're at a certain threshold value as a man. And the kind of idea beyond that is if you're at that certain threshold value, then anything will work anyway, right? So game doesn't matter, game doesn't make a difference. And this is a half truth. There is definitely an element of truth somewhere in this. Game definitely works better if you're good looking. Game works better if you're good with your words. Game works better if you're successful. Game works better if you're interesting and fun. Game works better if you have a cool life and lifestyle that the girl would have fun being a part of. Absolutely and totally true. However, there are guys that have very few of these things that do pretty well. And there are a lot of guys who have some baseline level of these things who do a lot better than they should with game. At the same time, there are a lot of guys who have tons of these things and still manage not to get girls. So, is game everything? No. Is game a huge factor regardless of what you have? Yes. All right? Now, there may be some guys that are so egregiously badly off that no amount of game will help them. That may actually be true. If you are incredibly unattractive, smelly, missing all your teeth, crippled invalid with mental deficiencies and no ability to converse or convey an idea, I'm sorry, it's gonna be hard for you to game. But that said, maybe game isn't even your biggest problem at that point. Because game is about conveying value, right? Game is about conveying value. If you have not enough value to convey fundamentally, you are going to have trouble. And at every level, you should be upping your value. But also at every level, if you have the skills to convey what value you have, you're going to do better than you would if you didn't have those skills. So game is not the solution to everything, but it is the solution that makes everything in every situation at least a bit better, and in most cases, a lot better. Another major objection I hear to game, which actually comes along with a piece of well-intentioned advice, is stop chasing girls, just get good at life and the girls will come. And this again is a bit of a half truth. Because if you did get really, really, really amazingly good at life, it's probably true. If you become a professional athlete, you probably will get some girls. If you become a professional singer or musician and you're famous, you probably will get some girls. If you become a public figure of any kind, there's maybe some girls that come with that, especially if it's in a positive way. If you become very rich and successful, and it's obvious you have a lot going for you, girls who are brought into your sphere of influence and are, bumping into you randomly or naturally in life are going to more often find you attractive than they would have before, right? So getting your life together, enhancing these elements of your life certainly will help you in a lot of cases. However, there's one key factor in all these examples I just outlined, which is exposure to women. If you became, for example, successful at women in a way where you are sitting at home working on a computer all day and you never leave the house, but you're making a lot of money, getting better at finances is not going to help you get more women, because there is no way that any woman is gonna find out how successful you are because you're just not coming in contact with them. Even if you decided to go the route of online dating, this success might not help you tremendously. Now, granted, maybe you could pay to get some nicer clothes taken, and maybe you could pay to get a better photographer, but you know what? Most people could pay to get at least one good outfit and a decent photographer, and you're not gonna be able to set yourself apart that much with just improving your photos in an online game. So even there, how are the girls supposed to know? Right? And yes, you could list your net worth or something like that on an online profile, or you could lead and tell a girl how successful you are, but you know what? That might actually backfire because it's gonna seem try hard, it's gonna seem weird and like you have an agenda. Otherwise, why are you leading with this? Why aren't you just leading with your personality? So ironically, the success, if you're relying too much on it and leading with it, might actually make you more lame and boring and unattractive rather than actually make you more attractive. So all things being equal, being more successful is gonna help you. And at a certain threshold level where that success leads to exposure and leads to women seeing you in a good light, then it actually will directly get you women. But for most of us in the real world for whom success does not mean the level of celebrity, and maybe even no matter how successful we were, we wouldn't get there because we're not in an industry or a field where that's a likely outcome, there still is this issue of the girls have to somehow find it out. And that's what game is. Game is about conveying whatever you have in the best possible way. So yes, by all means work on yourself. That's great advice. Along with game, go to the gym and get fit. Along with game, work on your finances and be more solvent. Along with game, have some hobbies and passions that you really enjoy that you could share with a girl that you meet. However, again, unless there is a tangible method for her to find this out, she's not just gonna like draw it from the air like radio waves. She needs you to present it to her somehow, and that is where game comes in. So yes, work on yourself. However, that doesn't substitute for being able to show the girl the work you've done. Another major argument I hear is the idea that game is manipulative. And this is ironic because game being manipulative is not actually an argument that game doesn't work. It's an argument that game does work, right? Because everybody is trying to get girls, or pretty much every hot-blooded male is trying to get girls through various means, through giving her flower and getting down on one knee, or being super nice and polite and politically correct, or trying to be successful and hope that a girl notices, or whatever your strategy is. A lot of people are trying to get girls. The idea that game is a manipulative strategy, the very word manipulative means capable of manipulating someone, capable of getting a result. So in a weird sense, arguing that game is manipulative is arguing that game works. Because stuff that doesn't work is not manipulative. Good sales tactics are manipulative. Good advertising is manipulative. Bad sales tactics and bad advertising are attempting to be manipulative, but failing. First of all, this isn't even an argument that it doesn't work. In this case, it's kind of an argument that it does. But the argument here actually is maybe that it does work, but it's weird or creepy or not something you'd want in your life or not something you'd want to stoop to or something along those lines. And this could be true depending how you do game. There certainly are ways to do game that are weird and bad manipulative and creepy. For example, if you were to game by blatantly lying to girls about your life and then kind of bait and switching them, yes, that would be manipulative in a very creepy way, and would also potentially be borderline illegal. If you were to do game in a way that was very pushy and, way too touchy and way too forceful, that would be creepy and weird and wrong, and again, quite possibly illegal. If you were to, for example, do game with bad intentions, if you planned on hurting girls either emotionally or physically, if you planned on telling girls that you were going to be loyal and faithful and then going behind their backs and sleeping with other girls, which would break your particular relationship contract with them, anything along those lines, that would be bad manipulative. And that one probably isn't illegal, but it's certainly immoral and unethical and would lead to probably a lot of blowback and negative consequences for you and a lot of upset women. So, is it possible to do manipulative things with game? Yes. Game is a tool. Every single tool can be used for good and for bad. And game is an effective tool. In the right hands, it can be used beautifully and can make the world a better place. In the wrong hands and with the wrong intentions, it can be used badly and make the world a worse place. So I highly encourage you to game with honesty, ethics, and good intentions. I encourage you to leave women better than you found them, that rather than the reverse. The next objection I hear a ton actually gets a lot more to the heart of what game is and gets to the heart of technique and how to do game the right way. And that is the objection that game is overly logical, puts you in your head, gets in the way of a free expression of your emotion. And this is actually valid. This does happen for a lot of people. It shouldn't, but it does. So my encouragement to you is do game in a way that you don't let this happen. What do I mean by that? Well, everybody at any moment has kind of their best instinctive ingrained behavior, and then they have things they could implement based on game. And if you were to do at any given time your best instinctive behavior, plus maybe a tiny little bit of that added game, that's gonna be how you're actually gonna perform the best. Right? If you do the instinctive behavior with no game, you're not gonna improve, and you're also not gonna do as well as you could with a little bit of selected skill. If you take a ton of game theory and try and put it into your game all at once, you're gonna get confused, you're gonna get lost, you're gonna get in your head, you're gonna become unnatural, you're gonna become robotic. It's going to actually be a worse result. And also, because it's a worse result, you get negative feedback, you probably won't learn as much, you won't be able to identify what's going well and what's going badly, and you're gonna get the worst of all possible worlds. So in the short run, on any given moment, you do close to your best just taking what you've ingrained, taking what you've already learned and running with it and just being in the moment and playing to win. However, the problem is by doing that, you will never get any better and your best will stay very, very mediocre. If you implement way too much game, you will also probably never really learn game well. You'll probably get discouraged and you also get no results along the way, so that's not very good either. The optimal thing to do, therefore, is mostly be in the moment. Mostly be natural, mostly be your best charismatic self of what you've ingrained, and then just a little tiny bit implement just enough game, hopefully surgically, that really addresses your sticking point and get just that little bit better without becoming robotic or unnatural or in your head. And if you find that the amount that you've inserted into your game is making you robotic or putting you into your head, get rid of it. Go back to just being natural for a little bit, vibe, be in the moment, and you can always insert that little bit of game later, okay? Be patient with yourself. Game should be something where every step along the way of learning, you're implementing just enough that you know it's making you better. And it should be a very positive journey for that reason. It shouldn't be a journey of a lot of like getting way worse in order to get a little bit better and then getting a little better and ups and downs and all over the place. It should be a steady, gradual progression of getting a little bit better by a little bit better by a little bit better because you're implementing one small thing at a time. If you implement too much, yes, it definitely can mess you up. The next objection I hear a lot is the idea that game only works on mediocre girls. It won't theoretically maybe work on the hottest girls or the smartest girls or girls from good families or with high self-esteem or something like that. First of all, I'll say that in my experience, the exact opposite is true. And in fact, the more girls are getting approached in lame ways, the more it is true that game will help to set you apart. However, I think where this kind of comes from is the idea that people associate game with just being cold approach, as though cold approach is the only type of game. Because there are a lot of different types of game, and the skills of game can be used anywhere, right? The skills of flirting can be used if you meet girls in a social circle, or online, or at a party, or through work, or wherever. So the skills of game can be used anywhere. However, if you think of game as just strictly cold approach, it is true that it is sometimes harder to cold approach certain girls of caliber simply because it's harder to find them in situations where a cold approach is easily done. A lot of times girls of very high caliber are busy or are in groups, and most guys who learn game don't learn how to handle groups, although they should. It's a useful skill. And so for these reasons, they have access issues for girls of the highest caliber. Also, it is a phenomenon in game that most guys will not get through game girls they don't deserve. So you can look at game, especially up to an intermediate level, as not really enhancing necessarily the quality of girl you could theoretically get, but just putting you in front of way more of girls of that quality. So let's say that maybe let's just rate your game level as like a 7 or something like that. Say as a man, your game level is a 7. And let's say you're gonna meet girls exclusively through work, and there is one available option for you at work. And let's say that you're gonna 25% of the time be able to attract a girl of the appropriate caliber level. Well, you're gonna end up with a quarter of a girlfriend, right? You might end up with a girlfriend, or 3/4 chance, 75% chance you're gonna end up with no girlfriend. However, if you were to learn cold approach and be able to meet 20 or 30 or 50 different girls that are that caliber, and say you still have, let's even reduce it, let's say now you have a 10% chance, right? You have a 10% chance instead of 25% chance, because it's a little harder in cold approach than maybe in a social circle, but you met 50 girls, well now you have 5 girlfriends. So you went from 0.25 girlfriends to 5 available girlfriends. You have a much healthier dating life, and now you can pick the absolute best of those girlfriends, the one you get along with the best, you get more dating practice, your game will get even better, you'll start to get more results, etc. So up to about an intermediate level, probably what's going to happen from game isn't necessarily that you're going to get a girl that's way out of your league, or that's like so much more high value than you. But what's going to happen is you're going to have so many more available options at whatever value level you're at. You're going to be able to pick the absolute best of them, and you will occasionally exceed that value level because you'll find the higher caliber girl that just happens to gravitate towards your type. Once you get to an advanced level in game, then you're going to get the girls you quote unquote don't deserve, right? And that's when the sky is the limit. That's when game becomes truly, truly amazing. But even up to a beginner or intermediate level, the very fact that you are meeting more girls and having more experiences and having more options is going to help you not only with your skill set, but also with the girls that you actually can date, even from the very start. So that is the beauty of cold approach. But I do want to make the point that cold approach is only one small part of game. Game is a whole skill set that can be applied to so many different things with girls, and even can be applied to so many different things in life, like sales, marketing, business, persuasion, etc. So it's a holistic skill set. And so to lump all of game just in with cold approach is very minimalistic. There is a lot more to it than that. And even within cold approach, there is something it can do for you at every single level, even if you haven't learned it well enough that you're getting the hottest women on the planet with it just yet. Another objection I want to address is this idea that chasing women makes you weird or try hard, and obsessing over women, running after them all the time, is inherently unhealthy. And that is absolutely true. Spending all your time and energy on women for an extended period of time is actually very unhealthy. However, for a short period of time, it's probably not. And spending some amount of time and attention on women is probably not unhealthy at all. And the key idea here is the idea of moderation and balance. If all you do all the time is think about women and talk to women, yeah, that's not healthy. And in fact, you might even anti-game yourself, because one big principle of game is to not put women on a pedestal, to not supplicate, meaning bend over backwards to impress women. And if all you're thinking about game all the time, you are putting women on a pedestal and you are bending over backwards to impress women, at least in general. So that's not particularly healthy. However, game, like anything else, is a skill set, and if you don't have that skill set, you're not going to do it particularly well. I personally probably spent more time than was healthy early on game. I was very obsessed with it, and other things in my life did suffer. My schoolwork did suffer. My athletics did suffer. It probably wasn't the healthiest or most balanced way to do it, but I got a skill set. And once I got that skill set, and once I was confident of getting results with girls, I was able to not put as much mental energy on that and to focus on my business and focus on my health and focus on other things. And I still was able to maintain that skill set regardless for the rest of my life and continue to improve it to this very day. So what am I talking about here? I'm talking about moderation and balance. Everything in excess is unhealthy. Water in excess is unhealthy. That doesn't make water an unhealthy element. It means that it can be misused. And certainly things like food, overeating can be unhealthy, but we need food to survive. Over-exercise can be unhealthy and deteriorate the body, but we need some level of exercise to survive. So game inherently, in reasonable doses, is a very positive thing. If overdone, is very not positive. And here's kind of the threshold, okay? There's this concept in game that says you shouldn't talk about game in game. There's another concept that says you want to talk about what you're passionate about. If you focus so much on game that you can't follow these two principles simultaneously, you're doing too much game. So if talking about what you're passionate about means that you would have to talk to girls about game, stop doing so much game. Get a life for a little bit, and then you can go back to game a little bit more, all right? So there's your threshold. If the only thing you feel like talking about to a girl is game and social dynamics, get a hobby. Work on your fitness, work on your finances, work on your life. But if you are still enjoying game and still living a healthy, balanced life, you will be just fine. There is nothing wrong with focusing on women, just like there's nothing wrong with focusing on money. If you want to get rich, you focus on money. You want to get fit, you focus on fitness in the gym. You want to get a lot of girls and good relationships, you focus on women to a point, but not obsessively. And the key element here also is there's a big difference between focusing on women and focusing on a woman. And in fact, focusing on women and having options maybe helps you to not focus on one particular woman to obsessive degrees because you know you have those options. If you have another objection to why you don't think game works, if there's something you're waiting for me to answer and I just didn't get to it, put it in the comments. This is the one video ever where I want to hear all your comments on all the reasons why you don't think game works. If I get some good ones, maybe I'll make a follow-up video, maybe I will address them. So by all means, give me your arguments why game doesn't work in the comments. Let's see what we can come up with, and I have no problem doing a follow-up video for this if it comes to it. Okay, so with that said, let me talk to you about why game does in fact work, why it actually makes sense, even though it seems that it shouldn't. And by the way, I'm gonna talk very narrowly here about specifically cold approach, because the argument that game works in general is a much easier one. The idea that having good social skills is effective and useful, I don't think is very controversial. The idea that knowing how to flirt is better than not knowing how to flirt, I don't think is particularly controversial. So those things all kind of make sense, right? The idea of knowing how to persuade and knowing how to do sales, which is an element of game, clearly that's gonna make some sense. The idea of knowing how to kind of do the dance of physical escalation and not make a girl uncomfortable, all of those, the skills of game, I don't think it's even controversial at all that they're useful almost in any context. However, when you talk more narrowly about cold approach, it is possible you can make an argument that it isn't well adapted or that it doesn't work in certain contexts, and that argument would actually be accurate. There are some places where cold approach doesn't make sense. So cold approach really is a unique phenomena of the modern era, right? Cold approach works theoretically best in a city environment, or at least a big kind of environment where people don't know each other for a long period of time and don't know each other very closely, don't have a lot of acquaintances in common. The closer you are to that environment, the more it makes sense to do things like walking up cold to a stranger and introducing yourself, because that stranger is going to have no starting impression of you, and their version of who you are is completely dependent on what you can show them. That is an absolutely golden opportunity, and it's a glitch in history. It's the glitch in the historical matrix. We did not evolve for this. We did not evolve for cold approach to work, but we're at a unique point in human history right now, and seemingly more and more so even going forward for the foreseeable future, where humans are highly anonymous to each other. Humans are experiencing each other in much more sort of encapsulated bursts where you can really make an impression in a way that you never really could in those smaller environments. How does cold approach work? It works basically on the idea that people are being bombarded by so much information they can't possibly take it all in, so they cue on certain shorthands. They cue on certain signals that inherently say this person has value or this person doesn't. This person's trustworthy or this person's not. And if you understand what those signals are and you can give them those signals, they will take those signals to their conclusion and assume you have value, assume that that you're someone they can trust, etc. Okay, so what is doing effective cold approach? It's number one, increasing your scope, increasing the amount of people you can talk to, and then two, when you talk to those people, hitting on those particular signals so that they very quickly form an impression of you that is favorable. And again, it's a historical glitch. It's crazy. It's not supposed to work. It's not supposed to exist, but it does. It is a cheat code. The game is a little bit broken, at least at the start. Here's the good news for humanity and history and forming good, solid relationships, which is that cold approach basically gets you in the door, right? It basically gets you in the door. It's the advertising. It's the sales pitch. After that, in a relationship, you actually have to deliver the goods. So what does cold approach do? It gives you more opportunities for more relationships. Similar to in business, if you had a good sales and marketing team, it will get you more upfront customers. However, if you don't satisfy those customers and you don't keep them happy, you'll lose them. You have to keep getting more and more and more. Whereas if you can keep your customers happy, you will not have to go find new customers all the time. It'll be a much easier life for you and a much more fulfilling life for you in business in this case, and now we're talking about in relationships, okay? So doing cold approach is essentially a cheat code, and it is the sales and marketing aspect of having a relationship. It is not the whole relationship, it is just a part of it, but it's beautiful because again, it gives you that scope, it gives you more opportunity to convey yourself and start off on the right foot, and it gives you more experience and learning, which is gonna help you with every single skill, which is gonna make you better at being in the relationship. Because if you've never been in a relationship, it's very hard to be good at it. If you've done cold approach and started 10 or 15 relationships and figured out those initial stages and gotten better at them, you're going to get better at being in the relationship and have a more fulfilling relationship than you would if you didn't have that experience. So it really is the gift that keeps on giving in that regard. But it does make sense that people would think cold approach doesn't work, because if you look at how we are ingrained historically, how we're ingrained culturally, if you look at a lot of the stereotypes and morality that have underpinned society for a really long time, those existed and occurred and grew up at a time when cold approach didn't make sense. It's only now in this very kind of anonymous, large world with very easy, quick communication, that cold approach makes a lot of sense. So we're at a unique point in history, and what works now is not what would have worked 100 years ago, 200 years ago, 1,000 years ago. In fact, cold approach would not have even made sense then, but it makes all the sense in the world now, and it's one of the most effective strategies ever devised. So why does it work? It's a lucky glitch, and it only works if you do it right.